Well, top of noon here on the East Coast, the search for solid ground on Obamacare. Democrats trying to find their footing with the political wind shifting on government programs. It looks like they're shifting a lot these days, a lot of different directions. Welcome to a brand new hour of Happening Now. I'm Jenna Lee.
Hi, Jenna, and hello, everyone. I'm Eric Shawn in for John Scott. Well, President Obama has been talking up the recent increase in enrollments for the Affordable Care Act, touting those new numbers. But some Democrats have been avoiding Obamacare as an issue ahead of the midterm elections, while Republicans, well, they're running right towards it, trying to gain some political traction by continuing to criticize it and calling for its repeal. Will it work? Elise Vieback is a staff writer for The Hill and joins us now from Washington. Hi, Elise. Look, they say 8.5 million or so enrollments. You would think that the Democrats will be proud of that, but what's happening?
That's right. Well, Democrats, many of whom hail from red states in this election cycle in the midterms, many of them voted for Obamacare, but now they're facing constituencies that are not in favor of the law. And so they're having to thread this needle where they say, I believe the law does do some good things, but I'm willing to adjust things that it doesn't do as well. And so those are people like Mary Landrieu, Mark Pryor in Arkansas, Mark Begich in Alaska. And all of these candidates are really having a tough time, particularly because news has gotten better for Obamacare, as you point out. And there are a lot of Democrats, including the president, that are urging them to run on the law. But the fact is that the reform remains unpopular throughout the country, so they're in a tough position for sure.
So basically you're saying that's a group that they're trying to wiggle their way right through this to get both sides of the issue?
They are, because polls show that repeal is, in fact, not the most popular position, despite the fact that the law is unpopular. What people want is for the reform to stay, but for it to be improved on a bipartisan basis. And so I think that's what these centrist Democrats, these incumbents who are so vulnerable, are trying to do. They're trying to sell themselves as problem solvers, people who are willing to part with parts of the law that are unpopular while maintaining the parts like, for example, the idea that people under 26 can stay on their parents' plans, very popular, and they don't want to get rid of that.
Well, the other question is this 8 million plus. I mean, could those all be potential votes for the Democratic line? Because they say, well, they'll have health care, but we don't know how many, first of all, paid. We don't know about the insurance premiums going up. We don't know about the hospitals that are dropping Obamacare. We don't know about doctors that are quitting because of it, too.
No, that's right. And I think the White House really does want to leverage those 8 million plus as a political constituency. But whether they can remains to be seen because, first of all, many of the people who've benefited from the law aren't people who tend to turn out to polls, particularly in a midterm election. In fact, the Republicans really have the wind at their backs right now because those older white voters who tend to oppose Obamacare are the ones who are going to come out and vote in November. And so I think that the White House is going to continue trying to sell the law, to publicize it, particularly among young people, among communities of color, and among low-income people who are benefiting from the Medicaid expansion, hoping that that in turn will lead to Democrats being more supported than they otherwise would have been in November.
Well, you raised a great point. Would that be enough to help those vulnerable Democrats?
It's very hard to tell. I mean, right now, 8.5 million or 8 million plus is a better number than the administration had previously seen. There's no question. The White House is riding high. And polls have shown that opposition to the law is starting to soften at least a little bit. In terms of people who believe that it'll hurt them, they actually now see it as not necessarily affecting them. And so that's a trend line that we're watching very closely. So I think there's a lot more time before November, but we'll have to wait and see.
Oh, and finally, David Axelrod had a great political axiom when it comes to Obamacare. He says opponents are more mobilized than the supporters. So you've got anger, you've got passion, and to really fire it up a constituency against Obamacare, that likely would drive more people to the polls?
That's exactly right. And Republicans have benefited from that enormously since the law passed in 2010. In fact, when you look across the spectrum of policy issues, Obamacare is the one where Republicans tend to all agree, which is really rare given the infighting in the party right now. And so I think that they are benefiting from that. They do want to take it to the polls.
All right, Elise Vieback, it's fascinating. We have a few months to go. Thanks so much.
That's right.
For your
Thank you,
insight.
Eric.
Of course.